We continue our lecture with viral infections. And systemic viral infections include many of classical infectious diseases of childhood, such as chickenpox, measles, rubella, and also life-threatening infections such as smallpox. We start our group of viral infections with chickenpox. As I said, it is infection of childhood. Usually children get infected with this infection, and the causative agent of this infection will be varicella zoster virus. It belongs to herpes virus family, and that means this virus can cause acute viral infection, which is a chickenpox, and latent infection, which is shingles. The source of infection is infected individual. Mode of transmission is respiratory droplets. Infection has incubation period. It usually lasts for about 2 weeks. And then during this period of time, virus grows, multiplies, and spreads throughout the body. After that, after incubation period is over, patients develop rash on the skin. The first lesions usually appear on the surface of the skin of the face and scalp, and then that rash spreads downwards. Rash looks like vesicles filled out with cloudy exudate, and if you culture that exudate, a lot of varicella zoster virus will be found. This is one of the self-limiting infections, and children usually recover from this infection without any problems. But then, please remember, varicella zoster virus doesn't go anywhere. It stays in spinal nerve ganglia of that child, and every time when it gets reactivated, then those patients develop symptoms of shingles. Also, you have to remember that chickenpox is a very serious infection for adults because in their case, the lesions become larger, affect epidermis and dermis, means go deeper. Scars will be formed in those areas. Infection goes systemic in adults and can cause pneumonia and other side effects or complications. For treatment of chickenpox in adults, we use acyclovir. It is antiviral drug. We use it against herpes virus and family of the viruses that belong to herpes virus family. For children, we do not use acyclovir. There is no need for that. And also probably remember from anatomy or biology class, human biology class, that we do not use aspirin for young children because it can cause complications. It can cause liver and brain damage. Vaccine is available today. It was approved in 1995. Now, shingles. It is a complication of chickenpox. When patients usually have outbreaks of shingles. Usually we see those outbreaks in the patients that are over 40 years old. Why? Because after we turn 40, our immune system slowly goes down. As a result of activation of varicella zoster virus in the spinal nerve ganglia, patients develop very painful, extremely painful lesions on the surface of the skin. Complication is not life-threatening, but as I said, extremely painful. The next viral infection is gingiva stomatitis, or we can call it fever blisters. It's caused by herpes simplex virus. For this class, you have to know two types of herpes simplex virus. Type 1 usually affects patients above waistline. Type 2 affects usually patients below waistline. The source of infection will be infected individual. Who usually get infected first? Of course, children. Young children usually get infected first time. When they get infected, after a couple days of incubation period, patients develop symptoms of intoxication. So the first couple days, patients might develop low-grade fever, headache, muscle aches. Then in a couple days, the lesions will appear on the skin or mucous membranes. When lesions appear on the skin, they look like vesicles filled with cloudy exudate. And once again, if you culture that exudate, a lot of herpes simplex viruses will be found. And if lesions appear on the surface of the mucous membranes, they look like ulcers. Who is the source of infection? Infected individual. How it's transmitted? It's transmitted through the direct contact. And then within the next couple weeks, patients recover from this infection. But once again, remember, herpes simplex virus causes latent infection. It means it's not gonna leave the system of that patient. It will stay in trigeminal nerve ganglia until the rest of the life of that patient. And every time when it gets reactivated, patients develop symptoms of gingival stomatitis again. What can cause activation of herpes simplex virus? Fever, any other viral or bacterial infection, sunlight, stress, so any factor that lowers immune system. Guys, there are different types of herpetic infection that you have to know for this class, and on the right side of this slide you see a few examples. The first one is what we call herpes Whitlow. Herpes Whitlow is infection of the skin of the finger. Usually it can be seen in young children if they develop rash on the skin or mucous membranes of the mouth, and they have a habit to suck their finger, then skin of that finger will be infected as well, and then herpetic lesions will appear on the skin as well. This is what we call herpes Whitlow. Herpes gladiatorum can be seen in athletes. If one athlete is infected with herpes simplex virus and has lesions on the skin, even if they get into direct contact to each other, the second athlete will be infected as well. And the last one is called herpes keratitis or herpetic keratitis. In this case, infection affects cornea of the eye. And once again, infection can be self-limiting and patients recover without any additional treatment. But please remember, if this lesion goes deeper and affect deeper layers of the cornea, then scars might be formed on the surface of that cornea, and as a result, patients might lose their vision. Treatment. Today on the market we have acyclovir available for us, which is anti-herpetic medication. We do not use it for children because it can cause mutations of DNA. And also you have to remember that this drug is not used for cure of infection. When we use this drug, we only prevent outbreaks, and also we can speed up recovery of those patients. Also, you have to remember that the treatment with acyclovir must be started before lesions appeared on the skin or mucous membranes. And on this picture you see a patient with a lesion on the surface of the skin and mucous membranes of the mouth. The next viral infection is measles, or we call it also Rubella. Another example of infection of childhood, it's caused by measles virus. As you see, the humans are the only reservoir for this virus, so that means this is the only source of infection. The virus is extremely contagious. If you get in contact with infected individual, there is a 90% of chance that you're going to get infected as well and develop symptoms of measles. So as I said, source of infection will be infected individual. Infection is transmitted by respiratory droplets. So that means patients inhale this virus. And that explains why the first symptoms of measles will be symptoms of upper respiratory tract infections. Conjunctivitis, runny nose, fever, cough. And then the next step, then virus spreads into lymphoid tissues, and when virus spreads into lymphoid tissues, patients will develop very specific symptom on the mucous membranes of the mouth. We call it Koplik spots. As I said, Koplik spots, it's a very specific symptom for measles. These spots will stay in the mucous membranes of the mouth of the patient for about 3-4 days, and if you are able to see them and recognize them, you will be able to diagnose measles before lesions appeared on the skin. So what are those Koplik spots? As I said, they're located in the mucous membranes of the mouth. If you look in the mouth of that patient and you look at the mucous membranes of cheeks, you will be able to see lesions that look like flecks of sand sitting on the really red mucous membranes. This is what we call Koplik spots. So after that, virus spreads into the bloodstream. And when it gets into the bloodstream, patients develop skin rash. The first lesions, the first rash will appear on the surface of the face of the patient, and then it will spread downwards. When that rash reaches feet of the patient, it means patient starts going through recovery. What you have to remember about measles is usually children with a strong immune system recover from measles without any problems. So this is another example of self-limiting infection. Some patients might develop acute complications, for example, bacterial ear infections or bacterial pneumonia, but most of the times, as I said, patients recover without any problems. But you also have to remember about very serious complication. It is a rare complication, happens not very often, but unfortunately it is a deadly complication. It's called subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. Basically, what happens if patients develop this complication? In this case, a virus doesn't leave system of the patient. It stays in the brain of the child, grows, multiplies very slowly, and usually patients develop symptoms of a subacute sclerosing panencephalitis in 5 years or more after they actually recovered from measles. Unfortunately, as I said, complication is deadly. There is no treatment, and those patients eventually die because their brain will be completely destroyed. Vaccine is available today on the market. You see, it was developed in 1963. The next viral infection is what we call German measles or 3 days measles or rubella. The symptoms of German measles or rubella are very similar to symptoms of rubeola. But they're not as severe. And this is the reason why we call this infection 3 days measles, because usually patients recover within 5-7 days. Usually patients recover without any problems, without any complications. They do not require any specific treatment. But there's a group of patients that we always have to worry about. Those are pregnant women. If pregnant woman gets infected with rubella virus, it can cause abortion or severe birth defects. Those are really severe birth defects of the eyes, heart, and brain. So basically today every pregnant woman is checked for presence of antibodies to rubella. And once again, vaccine is available. It's a part of MMR vaccine, means measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. The next viral infection is historical viral infection, and it's called smallpox. Smallpox as an infection was eradicated worldwide in 1977. It means after 1977 we didn't have any cases of smallpox among population, and it means we stopped vaccinating our population in 1977. Uh, so we can say that today nobody has immunity against this virus, and nobody is protected. Uh, uh, Patients that were born actually before 1977 were vaccinated. But does it mean that they are protected today? No, because usually the immunity against smallpox lasts for about 10 years. So basically today nobody is protected against smallpox, and that's why it can be used as a weapon of bioterrorism. Smallpox is caused by smallpox virus, which is a DNA virus. The source of infection will be infected individual. It is transmitted by respiratory droplets. There are two strains of this virus, variola major and variola minor. Variola major is the most aggressive one, and infection can be life-threatening because it causes very serious symptoms of intoxication, fever, headache, muscle aches, and then a blister rash will be formed on the surface of the skin. The rash becomes larger, goes deeper, affects epidermis, dermis, can actually merge. Secondary bacterial infection can be developed in those areas, and that's why infection can be really life-threatening. Today, there are two labs that have smallpox virus in stock, and those are CDC lab in Atlanta, Georgia, and one more lab in Russia and Siberia. There is no specific treatment for this infection, and a mortality rate of this infection is 50%, which means pretty high. And the last viral infection will be infections that are caused by HPV or human papillomaviruses. There are more than 65 different types of viruses. Most of them cause benign warts, lesions on the skin. But today we know three strains of human papillomavirus that can cause cervical cancer in women. This virus is very difficult to grow in the labs because it has a lot of requirements. We know that papillomavirus uses epithelial cells of humans as a host cells, but this virus doesn't use all cells. It only picks specific certain cells, and we unfortunately cannot figure out which ones it prefers. As I said, most of the times, most strains of papillomavirus usually cause benign warts, lesions on the surface of the skin. There is no specific treatment for this viral infection, but we can actually use liquid nitrogen to remove those lesions from the surface of the skin. But as I said, it's not specific treatment because those lesions can appear somewhere else.